Bonjour, good afternoon everyone. Mon nom est Steven Guilbeault, je suis ministre de l'Environnement et du Changement climatique. Très heureux d'être ici et merci de vous joindre à nous. Je suis accompagné de mes collègues et amis, le ministre Harjit Sajjan, ministre de Réponse aux urgences, le ministre Randy Boissonnault, ainsi que Andrew Campbell, vice-président de Parc Canada, qui pourra répondre à vos questions plus techniques. I would like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, who have lived on these lands since time immemorial. Jasper residents and local businesses owners continue to face the effects of the wildfire that devastated the municipality of Jasper and Jasper National Park almost 2 months ago. In July, I saw with my own eyes the incredible devastation, but also the incredible spirit of cooperation and resiliency from Jasperites. En juillet, j'ai eu l'occasion de visiter Jasper et j'ai constaté de mes yeux la destruction causée par le feu de forêt. La hausse des températures moyennes qui crée des conditions plus sèches et des feux de forêt plus intenses sont une des démonstrations de l'impact des changements climatiques. Les pompiers ont accompli un travail héroïque en évacuant 25 000 personnes en 5 heures et sauvant 70 % des bâtiments dans la municipalité. Près de 30 % des structures ont été détruites ou grandement endommagées. Now the community is recovering and rebuilding, and they need our help. That's why today, in the House of Commons, the Government of Canada introduced a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Canada National Parks Act. This important legislation would begin the transfer of land use planning and development authorities from Parks Canada to the Municipality of Jasper and help ensure streamlined decision-making where locally elected officials are empowered to make decisions regarding their community. This puts those important decisions of the rebuild of Jasper squarely back into the hands where it belongs, in the community, with close support and collaboration from Parks Canada. Following the devastating wildfire in July, our government made this a legislative priority for the first week of the parliamentary session. By enabling the transfer of planning and development authorities to the municipality, it will make it possible to give the town of Jasper, businesses and residents more say to shape the future of the town. We're committed to remove any and all barriers that impede these efforts. Le projet de loi que nous avons déposé est un pas important pour démontrer l'engagement de notre gouvernement pour supporter la communauté et les commerces locaux dans le parc national pour les aider à reconstruire au cours des prochaines années. Au cours des prochaines semaines et mois, nous allons continuer de travailler étroitement avec la municipalité de Jasper et l'ensemble des intervenants. L'objectif est d'assurer une utilisation efficace de l'espace, de garantir la conservation de l'environnement, de minimiser l'étalement urbain, tout en maximisant les possibilités économiques, sociales et communautaires. Parc travaille main dans la main avec la municipalité depuis 2022 pour établir les approches pour le partage de ses responsabilités. C'est aussi une étape clé pour garantir que les décisions importantes à Jasper relèvent de la municipalité et de la population. Many of us have been lucky at one time or another to have visited Jasper and witnessed the majestic beauty of the town and its surrounding countryside. Rebuilding isn't easy, but step by step, we will get there. Together, we will rebuild Jasper back to being a beautiful mountain community in a national park that meets the needs of local residents, business owners, and visitors from all around the world. I think all members of Parliament can agree to the importance of this work, regardless of political stripes. That's why I'm urging all members of the House of Commons to stand with us to support Jasperites. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. I did forget to introduce Mayor Richard Ireland, who's with us virtually. We can see him on screen. My apologies, Richard, but he's here with us. You go, Harj.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. I just want to take this opportunity to give just to remind Canadians on the impact that climate change has had on our country, and sadly, the community of Jasper was a victim of this this year. And we've seen the devastating impact of climate change and wildfire as a result of what's taken place. But at the same time, I want to reiterate just the brave action that was taken during Jasper and the cooperation that was taking place at all levels of government, all the different agencies, especially within the Unified Command, that actually saved majority of Jasper, and they deserve the credit for what they did. And especially Parks Canada for the amazing work, the unified command that took place, the Heavy Urban Search and Rescue Team out of Calgary, Can Task Force 2, and Alberta Wildfire Service. I do want to also stress that Jasper was probably the most fire smart community in the country. And there are also training exercises that were also conducted in the previous years that resulted in the amazing coordination work that actually took place. And the reason I want to mention this is because it takes significant effort to making sure that we're going to deal with the effects of climate change as we move forward. And during that time, and I had the opportunity to drive with Mayor Ireland to Jasper during that time, also with the Premier and many other folks of ministers within and MLAs from the Alberta government. And one of the things we committed to is making sure that we're going to deliver for the community of Jasper. And that's exactly what we did. We were on the phone almost immediately with folks, removing red tape very quickly. And that's what today is about working together to making sure that we can move as quickly as possible and do the rebuild of Jasper. But once again, I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the brave firefighters for their amazing work for what they did, and also just remind Canadians that it does come at a loss, that we did lose one firefighter who was battling the flames in Jasper at this time. So again, we'll continue to work together. There's a lot more work to do, and then a lot of good lessons out of Jasper will be talked about, and we'll work together across the country. Thank you. Over to you, Randy.
Thanks, Harj. Merci, Steven. Merci, Harj. Andrew, toujours un plaisir. Mayor, Your Worship, thanks for joining us today. Chers amis, les gens de Jasper ont besoin de nous. Ils ont besoin de leur gouvernement fédéral. Ils ont besoin qu'on mobilise comme Parlement pour les appuyer. Point à la ligne. What Minister Guilbeault and Minister Gould put on the table on the floor of the House today is a bill that will provide equity to Jasperites. What do I mean by that? It's going to put into Mayor Ireland and his council's hands the ability to fast-track the permitting and really remove any vestige of red tape as it comes to Jasper rebuilding and beyond that. Banff already has these abilities. It had taken some time to get Jasper to that point, but as Steven said, these conversations started in 2022, and the ability to have these municipal permitting and the ability to manage municipal lands is critical inside the park. Banff has demonstrated that mayor and council know how to do this work, and we want to equip Mayor Ireland and his councillors with the ability to do that. Why? Because we want to rebuild Jasper quickly, efficiently, safely, and to do that, we want to make sure that we put in Mayor Ireland's hands all of the powers he can have as a municipality, governed by the Municipal Governance Act in the Government of Alberta and following all the rules and regulations that apply. But we need to give Mayor Ireland the flexibility he needs to get Jasperites back on their feet. And I want to thank Harj and your team and the swift work that you did in your role as Minister of Emergency Preparedness. Like, you worked very closely with Minister Lowen, with Minister Ellis, with the Premier, and I have been now twice to the Unified Command. It was something to behold. Andrew, I think you and I were both there twice. Stephen, you and I were there once, and to see everybody rowing in the same direction, regardless of where they come from, and Parks Canada personnel from every corner of this country leaning in and demonstrating what it means to stick up for a community that was devastated, losing 30% of its buildings, a disproportionate effect on the residents, and now they need parliamentarians to row in the same direction. We need every single party to give us unanimous consent so that we can get this bill over the line, turn it into law, and give Mayor Ireland the powers that he needs to support Jasper. This is an important step along the road to rebuilding. We're going to rebuild Jasper better than ever before. As a former Minister of Tourism, I can say, and as a kid growing up in Alberta in Edmonton, Jasper was our closest national park. I remember going with my grandparents to Jasper. I remember being in Whistler Campground. We didn't have a lot of money. We had tents. And then we upgraded to like a tent trailer, and we thought we won the lottery. And quite frankly, those are the memories that I want for future generations. I want Jasper back. It is a gem in the crown of our national parks. It is our second most popular park, largest by landmass. We owe it to Mayor Ireland, Jasperites in the world, to bring Jasper back. Donc, mes chers collègues, aujourd'hui, c'est critique qu'on a le consentement unanime demain de nos collègues pour augmenter et donner les pouvoirs au maire Ireland et ses conseillers de faire tout le travail qu'ils peuvent pour rebâtir Jasper. Le gouvernement fédéral va être à leur côté. On a besoin du Parlement pour approuver ce projet de loi dès que possible. And with that, I'd like to turn over to His Worship Mayor Richard Ireland.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Minister Boissonnault, for that kind introduction. And thank you, Minister and Ministers Guilbeault and Sajjan, for your previous visits to Jasper and for your continuing support. It really is appreciated. On behalf of the entire community of Jasper, I want to take this opportunity to thank the federal government for today's really significant initiative. As a municipality, we have always valued the opportunity to increase our role in planning and development in a manner, of course, consistent with our unique form of shared jurisdiction with our federal partners. That partnership has been instrumental in shaping the Jasper that we know today, a community deeply rooted in its national park heritage. Today, we so welcome a legislative change that will set the stage to allow us to take on greater responsibilities in land use planning and development. This is a tremendously significant step forward for Jasper, and it comes, as you know, at an absolutely crucial time for our community. As you all know, this summer's wildfires have severely tested our resilience. But now, with this legislative support, we are in a much stronger position to continue our work with Parks Canada to recover, rebuild, and restore our beloved community and its surrounding natural and built environment. The changes which this legislation enables will permit us to plan for Jasper's future with more local input, ensuring that decisions made truly reflect the needs of our residents, while of course preserving the unique character of our iconic national park. And together we can rebuild a stronger, more sustainable community. So I really do appreciate this initiative. I appreciate so much this opportunity to join you here today, and happy to take questions that may arise. Thank you again.
De questions?
So unanimous consent, that's what you're looking for. How soon are you going to move a motion to ask for unanimous consent?
Very soon, as you might have heard from my friend and colleague, Minister Boissonnault, we will ask that tomorrow.
Tomorrow? After QP?
I believe so. I'm not an expert on parliamentary procedures, but I believe so.
And you think you'll get it? Like you've spoken with House leaders?
We've spoken to all of the political parties, and as we've all said, we wish that no one will play political partisanship with this bill. It is for the betterment of Jasperites that we're doing this, to give them the tools that they need to rebuild as rapidly and efficiently as possible.
J'ai une question pour le ministre Boissonnault.
Oui.
Cet été, votre première ministre en Alberta a dit que le gouvernement ne doit pas négocier avec les séparatistes du Bloc québécois. J'aimerais savoir si vous êtes d'accord avec ça.
Mais regarde, moi, je respecte tous les partis politiques qui sont dans la Chambre de communes et on a un Parlement. Et le Parlement est représenté par les gens qui votent pour le parti de leur choix. Et ça incombe comme gouvernement et gouvernement militaire qu'on travaille avec les partis qui tiennent les mêmes idées que nous selon chaque pièce de législation. Donc, je ne prends pas à bord aucun propos de Mme Smith et ni ce propos en ce qui concerne le Bloc québécois. Regarde, si on a besoin de faire une négociation avec le Bloc québécois pour qu'il y ait avantage les Canadiens et les Canadiennes, on est tous là pour desservir les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Et c'est ça que moi, je vais faire en tant que ministre de l'Alberta. Et je sais que mes collègues sont à bord aussi.
Peut-être ajouter, si vous permettez, il semble que Mme Smith ait oublié que durant les 10 ans du gouvernement ce gouvernement-là a été minoritaire de nombreuses années et il a été appuyé par le Bloc québécois de nombreuses fois. Je n'ai pas le chiffre en tête, mais c'est dans les dizaines de fois, sinon plus. Il ne semblait pas avoir un problème avec ça à cette époque-là. Curieusement.
Pendant que vous êtes là, M. Guilbeault, je sais que vous allez parler caribou dans un comité parlementaire dans un instant, mais s'il y a des négociations à y avoir avec le Bloc québécois, est-ce que votre décret sur le caribou est négociable?
Non, absolument pas.
Can I just ask you a question about a report that's going to be released tomorrow from the Canadian Climate Institute? I'm not sure if you saw it, but they're gonna be releasing emissions estimates for 2023. I know you've said in the past, Minister Guilbeault, that you expect emissions will fall for last year.
I mean, that's what the Institute said last year, and the department as well, that they anticipated that the emissions in 2023 would go down.
So just in anticipation of this report's release, there's still much work, I would imagine, we still need to do. So what more are you going to do to make sure that we reduce our emissions, we hit those 2030 goals and eventually 2050 goal, and especially reduce those emissions in the oil and gas sector?
So the draft regulations for the emissions cap on oil and gas emissions will be presented in the coming weeks. And we will also, I'd say, roughly by mid to end of November, table the final regulations for the clean electricity regulations, which are two very important pieces of regulations to help us continue tackle our emissions in Canada in different sectors. In the case of electricity, I mean, decarbonizing electricity is the key to decarbonizing the entire Canadian economy. So that's one of the reasons we're moving forward on the clean electricity regulations. We are guided by three principles: decarbonization, affordability, and reliability of the grid across the country. And obviously, this is part of a larger package of measures, including ITCs, investments by the federal government in provinces, with private corporations, with public utilities, to ensure that we increase the amount of electricity, that greener electricity and low-emitting electricity that's being produced in the country. And I have not seen. I've heard that the report was coming out from the Climate Institute. I have not seen it yet.
And do you think that will be sufficient to make up that gap?
There are other things that we are doing. Methane emissions, we're coming out with new methane regulations, my apologies, for that are coming out this fall to ensure that the oil and gas sector reduces methane emission by at least 75% by 2030. We already have regulations to reduce those emissions by at least 40% by 2025. But we need to do better. And these methane targets are the most ambitious in the world. We've been holding consultations with many stakeholders, and the message we're hearing, including from the private sector, is that they think that this is feasible. Ambitious, but feasible.
We will now take questions on Zoom. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions sur Zoom. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function. As usual, one question and one follow-up. Si vous avez une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée. Comme à l'habitude, une question et une question de suivi. Jack Farrell, please go ahead.
Hi, I have a question for Mayor Ireland. Essentially, I just want you to dumb this down for me. Does this amendment mean that Jasper residents don't need Parks Canada to sign off on their rebuilding plans, for example? Like, I need to know what this actually means for Jasper on the process front.
Thank you, Jack, for that important question. As I understand the legislation that is to be introduced, it is enabling legislation. By itself, it transfers nothing, but it sets the stage for further work that is already in progress. So we have been working since, I think, December of 2022 with Canadian Park officials, or Parks Canada officials, reconfiguring the governance agreement that establishes the town of Jasper. So that will flow from this announcement, which will then lead into, we anticipate, a new order in council with the provincial government. All significant steps in their own right, but all of them predicated on this first opportunity, the enabling legislation, to have that transfer. So by itself, it is the beginning of a really important process, but it doesn't by itself change the landscape yet, but it certainly gives us a really welcome opportunity to start to change that landscape.
I guess as a follow-up question also for you, Mayor Ireland, how long do you think it will take until Jasper has that authority?
Well, the first significant issue is, as the ministers just expressed, the issue of unanimous consent and whether or not this legislation goes to committee or whether it can be expedited. And of course, from our perspective, this is a nonpartisan issue. This is designed to assist the community of Jasper immediately with its recovery. So how soon we can get to the end of that road and have a transfer of jurisdiction will depend a lot on the reception to this particular legislative change that has just been introduced or is just about to be introduced. So again, I can't say except to say that the community of Jasper is tremendously anxious to get on with this. We have been in long discussions with Parks Canada over a number of years to get to a point where we think we are very close to agreement on the technical aspects, but we need this legislative change first, and hopefully that will come rapidly, and it cannot be quick enough from our perspective.
Thank you. We will now go with Stephanie Crum from CBC Edmonton.
Hello, thank you so much for taking my question. It was mentioned that there were barriers for Jasper to rebuild. Perhaps this is directed best towards the ministers about explaining that process of what exactly are these barriers for rebuilding?
Well, I'm not sure I'd say exactly barriers, Stephanie. What we want to make sure is that Jasper has the same ability to have land planning use authority that Banff has. And in conferring with Vice President of Parks Canada, Andrew Campbell, and maybe it also responds to Jack's question, this enabling legislation allows Mayor Ireland and his council to develop a community development plan right alongside Parks Canada in lockstep, like shoulder to shoulder, and then that community development plan can then go to the provincial government, and that can be signed off on the Municipal Governance Act. And then, as you just heard the mayor say, that transfer of authority to be able to do that development permits and to be able to have authority over how land use is undertaken in Jasper is really important, because otherwise what would happen is that work would all be done here in Ottawa and regionally by Parks Canada. We want to accelerate this process and give Mayor Ireland and Council the ability to do that work just like Banff has now.
Okay, thank you. And as a follow-up question, bit of a pivot, but there's been a lot of work with Parks Canada with regards to relations with Indigenous communities. I'm wondering how this might in some way impact that relationship.
I'll ask Andrew to come up to the mic for that.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Stephanie. And I think on a couple of fronts. One, Parks Canada has an Indigenous forum that we've had within Jasper now for, in fact, it's the longest Indigenous forum in Parks Canada's history. So it's been in place for about 20 years now. Within that forum, we've had tremendous support, and I think Mayor Ireland will also be able to say we've had tremendous support from Indigenous communities in looking at how they can assist in the rebuild. So we have reached out. We see everybody giving support to date through the Indigenous Forum.
Thank you. That's all the questions we had. Merci, c'est toutes les questions qu'on avait. This concludes the press conference.
Merci tout le monde. Ciao. Thanks, David.
Okay, thanks.